Welcome to the acclaimed podcast, The Deep Dive, featuring your esteemed hosts, Andy Monitor and Drew Dinzik, powered by BetSperts.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. Andy, happy Monday. Dan is echoing us, as always.
Happy Monday to you too. Yeah. Happy Monday to producer Dan. He needs to mute himself.
Joining us for the audio portion of the podcast.
I'm getting my echo. But we are.
Thank you, sir.
I don't think Dan understands how maddening the echo is because he's never heard it. I'm going to make him come in the room from the other side. I'll be the producer. It gets me in the morning sometimes on Broadway. But no, yes, we are back. It's week 2 of season's previews. And in a week where I said I wouldn't bet much, and I looked at the week and I said, I don't know if I'm going to have much action. I have far too many home run derby bets. We'll try not to talk too much about the derby because when you listen to this podcast later on in the week or in the summer, it's going to be very uninteresting to hear us cheering for derby stuff as we go. But I lost a bunch of money on women's soccer this morning, and I have a bunch of track and field bets to go tonight. So I will need this distraction of the New York Football Jets.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in a losing mood, this is the right team to get kicked off with, right? I mean, this is it's been a long time since the Jets really found sustained success, and I think 2021 was not entirely out of the reasonable range of expectations for this team. But I also don't know if you really come out of 2021 feeling like you're headed in the right direction, or if you're just kind of holding it up as an incomplete. And the Jets have gone about building a roster, gone about building a team in a way that is really, really reliant on their ability to evaluate talent. They have picked the pocket of some teams and some trades, and they have got a lot of draft capital over the last couple of years.
I think we talked about that when we talked Darnold. We said, not only did the Jets make out on that, because we talked a little about the Mayfield trade. We said, they made out on that and and their trade with Seattle. So
they
and you're right. A lot of what I read was it was a complete get this shit out of here because this is not what I want to work with, and that takes time. You can't just I don't know, in other industries, I suppose you could just walk in somewhere and just fire everyone and say, I'm bringing in my own guys. You just can't not field a football team or field a team of, God knows what you could do if you just got rid of everyone. But essentially at this point of all the starters, I think I read it was 20 out of the 22 starters are going to be people that were, taken under this regime.
Yeah.
I feel like that was right. So it was a full clean house from the old regime. We had a new coach last year and a new quarterback, and it went about as poorly, but kind of predictably as it's going to go with a new coach, a new quarterback, a rookie quarterback that we didn't see a lot of in college, with a shitload of bad injury luck and a, toughish schedule in a full ass rebuild. This Jets team wasn't going to. There wasn't some long, the long tail was to the under. There wasn't this team's really going to surprise. I mean, even without the injuries, that was going to be a really tough ask. And 100%. They did something we talked about with the Lions was the amount of rookie snaps they got. And that's going to be a weird juxtaposition for us because we made that out to be such a positive for Detroit. And I sat there evaluating the Jets today as I was finishing up some research. I struggled to make the same kind of connections. This team's doing it right because I think a lot of things they are doing is right for the rebuild, but I still really, really worry about the main important offensive position. And if that isn't right, the rebuild isn't going to kick around like other teams. So, and again, we have a quarterback rich draft coming up. There's a decent chance if this team just underperforms, maybe it's that's the perfect storm. if your quarterback is bad again, you might just say, well, we're punting on this. And he was bad enough where we can get a high draft pick. So I don't know, just kind of 2021. I guess my full take was just it was bad because of the injury luck, but it wasn't going to be good anyway. So what, 4? I had to look for the record. I couldn't remember. 4-13.
4-12. Yeah, 4-13. Excuse me. Yeah.
4-13. Got the shit beat out of him a few times and had the weird Mike White game. Which,
I love that game.
We
could talk about that among the highs of last year's Jets. We could start and end with the Mike White game.
Mike White's career arc was hilarious last year because he literally who was that? Alex Smith that team to death. Like every pass was a check down pass, and he still threw for like 380 damn yards. And then the next week they said, "Oh, he's going to do that. Like we're not going to let him." And then it didn't work anymore. Like, the Mike White career
still scored. Oh, they still scored 30 points that next week. It wasn't enough to cover. They lost by 15, but yeah, it was a weird season for the Jets. I reflect on 2021 as 4-13 is exactly correct in terms of my reflection on where this team was. They were you brought up the luck. They were unlucky injury wise, but at the same time, they didn't really miss a ton of time from players who are like that much better than replacement level anyway. Right?
No, I guess the pushback on that would be it was clustered. Like, it's not like you were losing all pro players, but you lost so much on that front line on the defensive side. Like that was just going to be a problem right off the bat. Like, oh my God, we have to play a lot of people that we didn't plan on playing a lot here in the in the defensive front, and also from the standpoint of the wide receivers, like developing a new quarterback, having a bunch of wide receiver injuries isn't helping either.
Okay, so let me kind of go through what I remember. We probably were cool on the Jets last year going into the year. That's my guess. I mean, there was really no reason to be excited about him. We had low expectations for year one of Wilson getting a full season. I didn't bet him anything for any positive at all. And I think we were a little coolish on the Robert Saleh hire. It was a matter of, well, they got a defensive-minded guy, and maybe he can reshape this team and his image. And he seems like a leader of men character, like Dan Campbell ultimately has proven to be. And he hired a guy in Mike LaFleur to run the offense that kind of fit the mold of if you're going to build a team with the defensive-minded guy at the head coach position, then you need someone who at least has some innovative aspects to their football mind on the offensive coordinator side. And Mike LaFleur had an up and down year. I would say mostly down. But it was not a good roster last year, and we knew that. And you looked at their schedule, which was tough, and you circled a couple games where they had huge advantages from like a rest and situational standpoint, and that was the Titans game. That was the Bengals game. And then they had, decent advantages over the likes of the Texans and the Jaguars in terms of those are the only teams they played where they had a better roster than the opponent. And those are their only 4 wins. The 2 advantageous spots and the 2 bad rosters that were on their schedule.
Yeah, they beat a couple of division champs, and then they beat 2 bad teams.
Yeah, right.
It was an uneven year. I don't want to, and just like, again, all I have to base this on is 2021, which we saw was a tough, rookie quarterback, rebuild, right in the middle of a rebuild. I don't want to have a strong opinion on Robert Saleh yet. Nor LaFleur. I don't think we can. I think as we see this season progress, I'm going to be quick. I'll be quick to build one this year, though.
Okay. Well, let me pitch this. The fact that you had a year one coach in Saleh, the fact that you had a young team with Wilson kind of rounding out his rookie campaign, and yet you still couldn't really cover games in December or January, is that or not a red flag to you? Because like they couldn't even overperform when there was no stakes in games like Week 18 against the Bills or week 14 against the Saints, week 15 against the Dolphins. Like they couldn't even really give you a competitive effort, even as they were rounding out their season and their guys started getting some reps together. Is that a problem for you, or are you thinking like it was always going to be a lost cause this year, no matter what? So we still have to hold on.
No, I don't really have a problem, and I think it was probably again for the best. They were able to go up and get a guy like Sauce and add a big piece to. And again, it's probably nice for a rebuild because we're going to mention this plenty of times when you talk about young defensive backs. But like, I really like Sauce. I really like him as a long-term prospect. I think that was a really nice grab at a big position of need for them. But we've seen time and time again, it's really hard for a corner or a safety to step in, especially when they're asked to be in the starting role, like we saw with Akuda at that same spot a few years ago. I believe he was the third spot.
Yep.
Yeah, that was so they thought we were taking Tua, but we went with the corner. But it's so hard for a guy to just step in and make a really big impact year one. So if this secondary stinks, but he gets a lot of reps, it's beneficial in the fact of, well, we're going to get more high draft picks. And then year 3 of this rebuild, we can really see a decent step forward as like the offensive line didn't play horrible at times. And, we saw some flashes of Wilson. We just need to, the coach, that's on the coaching staff. Like we saw him try to play a little bit of hero ball here and there. And it's like, hey buddy, you're not playing like Coastal Carolina today. This is, this is Buffalo. We can't pull this shit. So
yeah,
if the coaching staff can mold him a little more this year, then maybe a step forward. But if I'm a Jets fan, I'm begging for like, hey, we saw some glimpses, but we lost a lot of close games again because this is not a complete rebuild yet.
Well, I think that's actually going to be the test. Do they cover this year? Because the story of the Jets in 2021 was a team that could not cover. This team could not give you a competitive effort for 4 quarters. Like we came into the season eyes open. Zach Wilson's going to make mistakes. He's young. He was especially young and especially inexperienced considering where he came from and the lack of kind of college reps at a meaningful high leverage situations. And they had a defense that was built on around a player in Carl Lawson, who they bring in as a free agent, who didn't take a snap for them last year because of the was it an Achilles, I believe, in camp.
Yeah.
And so you had a defense that was tilted in the first place to the pass rush, making up the fact that you had bad coverage, and then you lost your pass rush, and so then it went from a sketchy defense to just a bad defense. The secondary was like hysterically bad. I'll never forget talking to some of our Jets friends last year in the preseason, and they're like, don't believe the hype about the Jets wide receivers because they're going up against the Jets secondary, and those guys are making them look good, right? And that stuck with me throughout the entire season because the secondary for the Jets was so bad last year that they made a lackluster group of wide receivers look good in camp. And they made a lot of other wide receiver groups look good over the balance of the season. And the handful of games they won were pulling teeth, and they needed help, and they barely got across the line. And then most of their losses were lopsided. They gave up 45 points back-to-back weeks against the Colts and the Bills, 54 points to the Patriots. Not a competitive effort in what was ultimately a 7-point game against the Falcons in London. Shut out at the Broncos 26-0, and that was a Broncos team that ultimately missed the playoffs. So this was like a bad team that you expected to be bad that played poorly. And if 2022, if they are ultimately not a 500 team, but they are at least flirting with or covering, the significant spreads that we are currently looking at on the in the look ahead lines, then I think you can maybe start talking yourself into a team that is figuring things out. I'm fine with letting a guy like Wilson make mistakes last year and using this offseason to try to train him up and kind of make sure he's learning from those mistakes. But it was genuinely concerning that the offense itself looked to play with more spunk in the games with Mike White or Johnson under center, right? That was like, you look for those like kind of small things, like is the offensive line playing a little better today? Like the wide receivers like a little happier, a little popping up after getting hit, like a little bit quicker, getting back to the huddle, and like it felt like they knew they had a better chance to win any given game with White or or Johnson under center, and those quarterbacks are not good, and so that's pretty concerning.
Yeah, I think, and I've been wrong before, and we did this. We buried Josh Allen. And to be fair, I'm trying to think of something else in sports that is just like transcended like normalcy, because quarterbacks, you just have not seen. How many dozens and dozens and scores and hundreds of quarterbacks have come into this league and just not produced? It's so hard to become an elite quarterback, and you see these guys come in and they a lot of them are just, they're good off the bat, or they have, you can tell. And then you see these guys like, oh, like this guy just not going to get it. Like, hey, guess what? Akili Smith, you're not going to be in the league long. And Josh Allen was like, man, this guy's physical and he's gifted as a runner. He's got this arm, but man, he just misses guys by like 10 yards wide open in the end zone. And people hadn't fixed that in the past. And that's, I mean, essentially some of the stuff, and I won't get too deep into the the analytics. We'll get into that, I guess, maybe later when we talk about him. Is just, it's not the same kind of rebuild, but like some of what we saw from Zach Wilson, it's like that big of a jump. Like if you're thinking like the Jets will be good with Zach Wilson this year or later in the in the cycle of this rebuild, you're expecting a similar kind of jump. And I think his ceiling is probably just like replacement level. I don't know. I don't know if he ever quite gets there. It's one of those things where it's like, man, we just didn't see a lot of this in college, and that was Josh Allen too. It's like, fuck, he played in Wyoming. What are we going to take away from playing in that conference against those kind of teams? Yeah, you can see how far he throws the ball, but it was, I think I'm out. I think I'm just out on him.
Okay, so in the pantheon of makes it, doesn't make it this year in terms of proving himself as a viable option, you're out. That sounds like 80-20. You think he fails?
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair assessment.
Wow.
Okay. I think we did similar to, maybe I'm just trying to jinx him into a Josh Allen-esque reborn from.
Well, what do we care? We don't care about the Jets winning.
I know, but I like to see people play well. But and then now he's in again. So I don't think he has the skill set or the acumen or whatever to be a high level quarterback. And now he's in the news for all this shit. Like you said already, it's not like he had the locker room around him. Like, it's one thing when the rookie quarterback comes out and the old wily vet comes in and like, hey, guess what? And it was Flacco in one situation with the Jets over the past couple of years. Like, you get an old veteran that comes in that knows what he's doing. Sometimes the team will be like, they'll respond to him, even if it's a short period of time. And it's this isn't going to be like some long-term fix, but the team plays well under a veteran. But like Mike White is not that guy. No, that bodes very poorly, I think, for Zach Wilson. That, like, just like you said, it did seem like the team was like excited that Wilson was on the sidelines. That really, really stinks for this offensive rebuild, because I do like these receivers. I like some of the, I said there was injuries. There was, I like them for upside. There's a non-zero chance that none of these wide receivers turn out to be top 10 guys in the league ever.
Yes.
In fact, that there's a good chance like that, but
sure,
there's a decent chance that they have like 4 top 20 guys on the roster. That's like the ceiling. All of these guys
top 30. 4 top 30.
I want to go like top 20 in a position, like top 20. You have the top 20 slot guy.
Okay.
You have 2 top 20 outside guys. Yeah, top 30 overall maybe is fair. Like, all of these guys have flashes. We've seen a lot of it. And Barrios Davis and drafted another one. So
yeah, and they bring in the tight end from Cincy too.
Yeah, Uzomah, they were horrid at the tight end position. In fact, I think they just straight up didn't throw to tight ends last year because, I
don't even know who their most targeted. Who was even their most targeted tight end? Was it Tyler Kroft?
Probably, yeah. Here from the Football Outsiders, the Jets were tied with Buffalo for last place on how often they threw to tight ends. Like they just didn't because they didn't have good tight ends. Uzomah is the real deal. Like Uzomah is very good. So I think you have a good receiving core. You have an offensive line that's decent, and that's when the quarterback doesn't work out, it feels like a giant waste. And I think that's why we might be at with this. So I don't know. What do you make of the old MILF Hunter?
The old MILF Hunter, I'm at 65-35. It's not going to work. I think that, and partially I'm leaning on likes of our friends like Thor and some other folks who really evaluated him closely in college, who kind of pointed out that he had two levels of performance that were pretty stratified. When he was going up against elite competition, he did not have it. And when he was going up against the dregs, he was amazing. And that kind of glossed that kind of a signature at the college level does not portend to NFL success in general. And so I'm not quite as bearish as you as 80-20-ish, if that's right. I put those words in your mouth, so by all means correct me. But yeah, I'm like maybe like 65-35. It doesn't work. But I'll tell you what is very, very sure, and that is there are no excuses to be had with this offensive depth chart. This is a good offense on paper outside of the quarterback position.
Kind of is.
Period.
Like, yeah, the only position I think you're truly deficient will probably be the only position that truly matters. So yeah,
I
like
agree.
a good young wide receiver core, decent running back options, a decent catching option out of the backfield. You added a tight end who's, I mean, his ceiling is to be a top 5 tight end. And then your offensive line is fairly decent, coming together, getting healthy. So yeah, it could just fall. The failures of this team may fall squarely on this young Morbin's shoulders.
Yes, but at the same time, like going back to what you said sort of off the jump, I don't think from a Jets standpoint you are pressing the ejecto-cedo button if it doesn't work for Zach Wilson this year, right? Like if that's your weakness and you have no plan B in place this year, none. If it does not work with Wilson, you are going to lose many games and you are going to have a high draft pick in a draft that has some bona fide quarterback options. And so you could either flip those draft choices for a quarterback that exists or take another shot on a guy. But I do worry a little bit that if it does not work this year, if it is clear that Zach Wilson is not the answer, then Joe Douglas, the general manager, is going to be under enormous amount of pressure. And I hate it when guys are on losing franchises and they are now all of a sudden facing enormous hot seat pressure at the general manager position. And the quarterback is the problem. Like that's usually when mistakes compound mistakes, and as far as decision making goes, right?
Yeah, we've talked about that a few times with front offices and how they build teams. It's like, hey, guess what? The moves that this guy's going to make next year, they're not going to be bad. They're not going to be for the best of the team. They're going to be for the best of his keeping his job for like 2 extra years and getting that nice salary and setting himself up to take a year off and bounce back as assistant GM somewhere else.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I agree. Like, I think he has an extra
good
year.
roster. I mean, he ought to, because I guess number one, I don't know how much like the fan base and everybody seems a little beaten down, even the ownership group, like in terms of like what they're actually even expecting out of any of this. And so there might not be a ton of pressure. That would be good, I guess. But I also think that anyone looking objectively looks up and down this roster, both sides of the roster, frankly, and says that this is, considering where we were, there are some talented pieces here. And a lot of those were drafted or acquired by Douglas outside of the quarterback position. And if you're going to say, well, he made the mistake in terms of who he selected in that draft, and then you were going to hold him responsible for it and he loses his job because of it, then I guess you want to operate that way. That's your prerogative if you're an owner. But there are enough positives up and down this roster, I think, that you can say, okay, well, maybe he doesn't have the quarterback figured out in terms of evaluation, but he's got the rest, because they had a great draft. Frankly, it was an extremely productive draft in terms of plugging holes. They got guys who can contribute on day one in Gardner, Wilson, and Johnson. And They didn't. I don't love taking a round 2 running back, but when your running back room looks like theirs does, then go for it. I don't care. And I think getting young legs is never really a bad idea. And overall, the players that they lost and let walk out the door aren't really moving the needle for me one way or the other. And the players that they added are all relatively solid looks. Big upgrade at tight end. Decent upgrade at the cornerback position. If you hit on Sauce Gardner, then all of a sudden your defense goes from bottom 3 to, kind of the 15 to 25 range. And you take a little bit of pressure off your offense from not making mistakes. But, I think at the end of the day, the process looks sound outside of the one potential looming mistake of the quarterback evaluation in that loaded 2021 NFL quarterback draft.
Yeah. And I will say too, like the Breece Hall, as I started to go through maybe looking for some long shot rookie of the year, it's like, this is just not the kind of team that's going to set up for anything like that. Like,
no, I don't even think so either.
Again, if you look, this schedule had some soft landing spots last year. It's not, there's not going to be enough of those where he gets the usage. Like, again, you're going to be throwing a lot. So I'm not sure in what world, like, there's enough situations
Also,
where you're just running the ball late with this guy, and he, he shows out. So it's going to be
he's going to have a role.
Receivers.
For sure. He's going to have a role. But so is Wilson, frankly. Like, I don't think you can take Wilson or, even though these are players I have high grades on, Wilson or Hall they are not in the running for offensive rookie of the year, in my mind. There's just too many mouths to feed, and no one to feed them.
Yeah, I like Wilson, but I had to cross him off too. I don't have that many rookie of the year. Like, the rookie of the year is incredibly tough this year.
I got a rookie of the year bet that I made today after talking to Will and Pat Careen on the podcast I did this morning that I am pretty excited about, and I'll save it for when we get to that team. But I'll
save mine. I think I posted them when I played it, but I played one short one and one long one, and then one hilariously long one, which I will bring up later in this podcast, I guess, because it does jive with this one. But so the defensive side of the ball, like you said, the secondary was rough. We added a rookie. We added some pieces. The pass rush, like I said, cluster injury, missed a lot of pieces. I think the pass rush is going to be good this year, and
should be.
Stinks because where's the pass rush help you when you're
helps
leading?
You put away a game. Yeah, helps you put away a game.
When you're not the kind of team who's leading a lot of games, a good pass rush might go underappreciated, maybe is the word for it. But I do think they have a solid rotation, like 6 guys who are going to be able to kind of do it from all over. And, they're going to be good in the pass rush and still weak in the secondary. So I'll save my next thought for how I'm attacking this team, because I have a thing I like about this team.
Oh, well, I'm interested to hear, but they're not going to be a team that I'm making a lot of halftime bets on, a lot of live bets on, just because they're not playing in primetime very often. And I know that's not a good reason not to make halftime bets on a team. But I definitely focus more and try to have a stronger opinion on teams that we'll be doing shows for. And there are not a lot of those on their schedule. But at the same time, I like that point, which is if you come into a game and your offensive skill position players and your offensive line are winning their 1v1s and Zach Wilson is having a good day, a missy day where he's not making the back-breaking mistakes, you could play with a lead in the second half of a game, in the fourth quarter of a game, at which point in time, this defense is good enough to help you put away that lead, right?
Yeah, that's fair.
And then the other side of the coin is Zach Wilson's having a shit day. Your guys aren't winning their one-on-ones, and this defense is getting still enormously scrutinized in the back half, especially, even with the additions they made, even with the investments they made, because they're a year or two away. The one thing I wanted to get your opinion on the defensive side of the ball, Robert Saleh and the defense coordinator, Jeff Ulbrich, did they leave the good defense in San Francisco because it was a talent thing? Or will we at times see a defense this year that is resembling that San Francisco defense that made it to the Super Bowl?
Like I said, I think they just had so many injuries on the front. Your front seven was so beat up. It was really hard to evaluate. Like, did they take a step forward on defense this year? And again, they didn't have a great schedule, which is still wild that they beat the Bengals. Like the Bengals and the Titans game are so goofy for me. I feel like they kept it close with Tampa late in the year as well. They had some goofy games, which didn't make a whole lot of sense. Obviously, they had some quarterback scuffling around, but no, I think it's very hard for me to evaluate what the defense did last year. And like I said, this is a big uncertainty team for me, where I probably won't make a lot of big proclamations about Saleh, the management, the rebuild, until I see a few games this year. It's like, what have we worked on? Where do we have Zach Wilson? Where do we have this defense? And can the secondary just how sometimes a team is bad at a positional group, but they do a great job of hiding it. Like they do other things. They scheme away from it, where they're able to just hide a bad secondary by having really good scheme with their off-ball coverage with the linebackers, or the where they're lining up their front seven, and getting help to the guys who need it.
You're kind of describing the Robert Saleh San Francisco unit.
This is what I'm saying. Like, they were able to do things with that outside pass rush that were, again, they had some big names that were helping that, but the pass rush was doing things that were helping other parts of the team. And if I see that from this team, I am a buyer on the New York Jets this year. And not to say they're going to go 10-7 and they're going to make the playoffs. It's not a thing. They have a tough schedule and they have a bad quarterback. I'm way more interested in seeing this defense take a step forward, because I'm not holding out hope for Zach Wilson to do much. And again, maybe we should pull the schedule up to show just how
let's look at it.
Dire things are.
I guess
it's not
Zach
terrible.
Wilson and the MILF. You made the MILF joke about Zach Wilson. Do you think that impacts at all the way that he is viewed in that locker room? Or do you think that in general, his quality of play dictates his leadership at this point?
I don't think most guys care what you do in your personal life, unless you're a real shithead and you're committing crimes. There's no law against banging older ladies. It's what you do in your personal life is completely up to you if it's within the bounds of the laws and consensual. So I don't think people care. If he steps up more as a leader and starts playing better, I think that's going to be a way bigger deal than anything he's done. But what he does between the tackles is more important than what he does between the sheets. So I will be looking forward to that.
I will only say it puts a little gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, it does. If he's bad, it doesn't help.
Right. If he's bad, it hurts. If he's good, maybe guys are looking at him a little differently. I don't know. Tough for me to really say, but he needs to be good. And I don't know that 10 games in a row where you're a dog helps you at any stretch of the imagination. This is a lopsided schedule where the beginning of the schedule is extremely challenging in terms of quality of opponent. The AFC East draws the AFC North this year. So congratulations. You get to play real big boy defenses in Cleveland, Cincy, Pittsburgh, and Baltimore. And oh, by the way, the Jets get all 4 of those in the first 4 weeks of the season. How about that for a weird scheduling quirk?
Well, and not like we said, start naming defensive player of the year candidates from the top.
Sure. Miles Garrett, TJ Watt.
Yeah, it's Watt, Garrett. You're going to put that newfangled offensive line to the test right away. You're going to play some tough defenses, some tough pass rushes.
Really good coverage from Baltimore with a healthy secondary week 1.
Yeah, it's a quarter stat. Sacks are a quarterback stat, and I think that'll be on display here if we see Wilson taking some heat.
I don't have any problem saying all 4 defenses in the AFC North are I think all 4 finished the season top half, and I think 3 of them finished the season top 10. Which is a really, 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 really tough way to start your season if you are a second-year quarterback that is desperately trying to find some footing in this league, some proof that you belong at this level. That's not how you want to start. You want a much softer landing than that, and they just did not get afforded that at all. They do at least don't have, they do presumably get Cleveland at a point in time where their starting quarterback is suspended potentially. They get Baltimore at a time when Baltimore is going to be figuring out things on their offense in terms of roles and responsibilities, which may help their defense look better than expected in weeks 1 and 2, maybe even week 3, maybe 4. I mean, there's potential here for the offenses that they face in the AFC North to give them some breathing room. But again, they are going to need, if you're coming out of the first 4 weeks of the season 2-2 as the New York Jets, which is kind of where you need to be for people to feel like things aren't already going down the toilet, you're going to need to win those Cleveland and Pittsburgh games, which are on the road and which you are going up against a bona fide defense. And those are tough asks.
Yeah, have fun with that. And then it's funny too, because there is some softness later in the schedule, and not just Detroit, Jacksonville, Seattle, but like Miami, and we'll get to them Wednesday. That's a massive question mark. Miami has a huge swath of possible, like, where they end this season. Yeah, the range of outcomes for Miami is huge. Like, if the this is not like hot take Andy, but the Jets hitting like their 70th percentile positive and Miami hitting their 30th positive negative in the range of outcomes has the Jets favored in that game heading to Miami. Like, the Jets as a 1-point favorite is not out of the realm of possibilities. If Miami just, if the Tua thing just doesn't work, if you're full like Tua negative, guys, I know there's plenty of people that have been on that train for a while, but like Miami, there could be a bunch of wins at the end of the season, which would stink if this team isn't that good, and they end up moving up and have to draft like 12th or something. So many teams that we've seen do that before and miss out on just tanking to get one more great piece to finish this rebuild. But other than that, it is like you said, brutal start of the season. We'll see how good Denver is, I guess, but that's still not a good spot, and a bunch of rest disadvantage spots for him. You can see all those big orange spots, especially late in the season. A couple nice ones, but the green one, it's against Miami. Like, I don't know what that game's going to be against Cincinnati. Like, that is an explosive offense, especially in the passing game. Have fun with your new young secondary taking care of that. So. Outside of Chicago and Jacksonville, not a lot of super advantageous spots that I like for this team. So not hopeful.
You got
season win total's probably about right.
You got donked on rest. You got to play Pittsburgh, Miami, Minnesota, and Buffalo, all with the Thursday to Sunday bump, which sucks for them. I mean, those are the spots that I am the most keen on seeing who got screwed, and the Jets got screwed on those. So now you're at a preparation disadvantage and rest disadvantage.
Yeah, they play
4 times.
Playing teams coming off the mini bye a couple times. That sucks. Like, that sucks for them bad.
Yeah. The travel stuff is weird. They got to go at Green Bay, at Denver back-to-back weeks, which are 2 tough trips in a row in terms of just being ready to play, feeling good on a given day. Similarly, back-to-back at Mini at Buffalo. Buffalo's not as big of a trip. In years past, I would have highlighted that with a brighter orange, but who cares if you're just going from New York to Buffalo? But quality of opponent matters obviously there. And then they finish the season with at Seattle, at Miami, 2 tough trips back to back. Go play in the heat, and and finish off your season down at the beach. Definitely going to get an honest effort out of the boys in that one, right? So it's not a great schedule, frankly.
No.
And that, to me, spells a very specific way to approach this team from a future standpoint, which is not to bet on them at all, to do anything good at the outset of this season, but to lay in wait and hope that the market overreacts and hope that there is some selling even beyond. Because right now, the market power rankings, you want to guess where the Jets are? Because I think a lot of people would tell you this is kind of a buzzy team, right?
Yeah,
Like people
they
would
have
say
had a
there's a
little bit of.
little bit of positive buzz about this team. You would agree with that?
I've seen it just from, I don't know, people talking, and yeah, in the market out in the streets, there's a little bit of buzz, but I have them as a -6. Like
They
that's
are right now, their market power ranking -3.5 points. Okay. So you're colder on them than the market is. But that not -3.5, and again, this is always the case. Teams tend to be bunched together a little bit more tightly at the onset of a season. Then ultimately they get spread out as you kind of get 4 weeks of information about them.
Sure.
They're the 26th ranked team, just ahead of Seattle, which I agree with. Just behind Carolina, which I agree with. I think 26th is probably about right for this team, considering who the quarterback is.
I've
And
started them lower with, there's
okay,
there's teams in my power rankings that are anchored harder. Like it's going to take a lot for me to move this team up or maybe down. The Jets, that's we do this in our fantasy football draft. Like we have the board with the stickers.
yeah.
And then after the draft, there's like 10 trades that get made that night. And as the beers flow. And sometimes when a guy drafts a player, another guy will say, don't put that sticker on too hard. Because it's like, well, why don't you give up all your trade? Like you're obviously trading for him then. But it's one of those where I didn't push the sticker down too hard on the Jets. Like I am willing to make a decent size adjustment if this defense comes out and plays well. So even in preseason and Zach Wilson shows anything, but right now they're -6.
Okay. So I'm pretty close to you. I'm like at 5.5-ish. Market 3.5. So basically we're saying the market is a little warmer on this team than they ultimately will be. And I think if we're talking about them 1-3, 0-4 out of the gate, and if they aren't covering those spreads against the AFC North, then there's gonna be downward momentum for how the market rates this team, and it could push them to the 6.5 range. At which point you get into the softer portion of the schedule. You get a couple of spots where you're going up against other teams that I think are a little overrated, like Green Bay and Denver, and maybe you're a bet on team, kind of the later portion of the season. Does that sound reasonable to you?
Yeah, we'll take a quick look at the odds before we kind of close up shop on the Jets on how we're maybe attacking or not attack. Sometimes the best plan of attack is to put the money in your wallet and put your wallet in your sock drawer and then not bet any money. And that should have been my strategy this morning with women's soccer, but that's life. Yeah, the Super Bowl, the AFC, those numbers are not long enough, not big enough. Even the East
No.
price, like with the Bills, like what would it would take? A Josh Allen injury, and then a 90th percentile kind of season from the Jets to even sniff making some sort of relevance in this season. Everything would have to work. Making the playoffs 7-1 is probably. I mean, again, it's the AFC. There's maybe too many good teams in the AFC to be taking flyers on a team like the Jets when you have such a heavy middle class and such a clear upper crust of like 3 or 4 teams. Like it doesn't leave a lot of spots available. That's intriguing though. And then, like you said, the win total, juicy over 5.5 or a juicy under 6.5, probably fair.
Mhm.
Where and again, I said I want to see how this team plays on defense, but a lot of the things that I am bullish for revolve around this young receivers room, bringing in Uzuma, and Zach Wilson being even half decent.
Sure.
If we see that, and Sauce Gardner struggles and the secondary struggles, like it's probably a bit of an overs team for me. Right, I don't think the market's rating this offense high off the bat. Or if we see some things in the preseason or early on, it might be an overs, a live over team for me. That's about all I have for the Jets. Like
You know what's
if we can see, if we can see a team that And like you said, this is the kind of team that would cover some spreads as well. But if you see a team that can get this offense moving a little with the passing game, and then still can't, like, oh shit, they got within a score of us again. Now we have to, hey, we're the good team playing the Jets. Now we have to go down and score again. Like, if they can keep pressure on the teams they're supposed to lose to and force them to score 28, 31, like, for sure, it's going to be a super fun overs team. It's like, hey,
Super fun.
I said made so much Jets. I've made so much money on the Jets this year. How? They're 0-5. Yeah. Well, they're scoring 22 points in their losses.
There's a bunch of over games on their schedule. Cincinnati week 3 looks brilliant. Miami week 5 is probably going to be a nice over spot. Denver week 7, solid over spot. Buffalo, great over spot. Yeah, I agree with that. And actually, if we can, if the offense looks especially, struggles early going up against some of these elite defenses we're referencing, then that even, that helps crystallize this angle even more.
Yeah, that's kind of my final take on the Jets. Is I will be, and again, I hate, like, pushing for something. When you put these things in your mind, be ready to throw them in the fucking garbage. Don't force us just because
too late. You already said you bet. You already said you're betting overs. You said
I know, but I'm ready to pull the plug and bail on this right away and just not ever bet a Jets game this year. Which is fine.
I guess what level of I reference, like, kind of putting bands around teams in terms of not adjusting, and the velocity at which you make an adjustment on a rating is unique for each team. Some of them you have relatively high certainty on, you're just not going to budge. And I think, honestly, there could be some games that Zach Wilson surprises you in the first 6 weeks of the season. And how do you not get tricked, right? Or what is the, kind of what is going to be the characteristic about this offense looking to, quote unquote, come together that kind of sells you on, okay, I need to adjust this team up from the -6 range to the -3 range?
Really, I don't think you're going to see the receivers, like, be the problem. If they're not as good as I hope they are, that's so be it. I still think they're going to be decent. I think really how I'm going to be tricked is, like, if they're winning despite Zach Wilson. Like, if he's making if they're making poor, his decision making drives everything around this. If he's making poor decisions and they're just, hey, they've had good luck facing other teams and have some injuries in game, or fumble luck, or just turnover luck in general, or just a little bit of big play here, big play there that isn't sustainable, and Zach Wilson is still making poor decisions, but they're like 2-2. It's probably not a spot where I'm ready to buy this team. Like, he has to have good decision making for me to get excited about betting the Jets. And again, that goes for the offense too. If I want to bet this team as an overs team, he has to be making good decisions because I want that offense humming along. Just, again, losing every game but scoring like 22.5 points a game. That would be a great Jets team for me.
God, it would. I was hopeful we would get that Jets team last year, and there was total chaos out of the gate. 14 points, 6 points, 0 points their first 3 weeks. They didn't really find their stride offensively, as we mentioned, until the Mike White experience. And then after Mike White experience was over, they only ever got to 26 points in their win against the Jaguars. Otherwise, they were like in the 17-point range most games. So they need to find that one more touchdown. They need to get from 17 points a game up to like the 23, 24. At which point, this is a team that I'm finally willing to bet on and or back against the spread. Any final thoughts on the New York Jets? And I guess I'll ask you one question to get out here. At what year are we bullish on the Jets making the playoffs when we're doing our NFL previews? What is the calendar year?
I think there's a decent chance it's next year.
Because Wilson stops sucking, or because they draft a good quarterback, or because they get a Jimmy G-ish type quarterback in here. Like I think
there's a non-zero chance that the replacement for Zach Wilson, if that's the route that this ends up going, is not from the draft. I think there's a decent chance it might be a trade for somebody at that point.
So
I'm not sure what
So give me your reaction.
because they have draft capital.
Zach Wilson gets a little banged up in the preseason. The Jets pull the trigger and trade for Jimmy G. What is now your rating on the Jets?
I probably have to bump them 1.5.
I mean, it looks a lot like the freaking Niners at that point.
Yeah,
I'm
not super sold on Jimmy G ever, but
no, me neither. But that's
a big step up.
Yeah, you're at like a league average rating at that point. 6-point difference between Zach Wilson and Jimmy G.
I'd coming into a new system like that, I'd move them up 2.5 off the get-go.
It's not a new system. It's Mike LaFleur.
It's fair, but still, it's a whole new group of guys. Like if they just bring him in, it depends when they bring him in. If they brought him in like right now, and it looked like it's working out, like yeah, he's a 4.5 point upgrade.
If they consulted you and said, we're considering this, we have to give up virtually nothing for Jimmy G, and it could totally change our outlook on this 2022 season, what would you tell them to do?
I'd probably pull the trigger. I love a known quantity over a wish and a prayer.
It's a really interesting hypothetical.
Little thought exercise to close down the Jets. So should we do another podcast?
Yeah, let's do one. Talk to you next time.
Yeah, we'll see you in a bit. I'm winking at the audio, the video people. All right.
I love it. 2, 1. Welcome to the deep dive. Fired up for this one, Andy, because I do not know where you stand on this team and their prospects for repeating what was a moderately, quietly successful 2021 campaign. And of course, I am talking about the team that has the third highest odds to win the AFC East, the New England Patriots. Crazy to frame it this way, I guess, but the market is saying what it's saying. It right now has the Patriots rated as a league average team. Market power rating them as about half a point better than average, 16th best team in the NFL, and they're coming off of a playoff campaign led by a rookie quarterback, which is really rare. But we have been trained at this point in our lives to believe anything is possible with Bill Belichick as your head coach. But the 2022 campaign kind of revolves around exactly how much of how much heat does he have left on his fastball? Because he's now going to have to go it alone, pretty much. No, Josh McDaniels is gone. The help he was getting from his assistants and whatnot. I mean, you look around that coach's room now. You got Steve Belichick doing the weird tongue thing. You got Matt Patricia in there with his pencil. There's a bunch of other castoffs that have made their way onto that roster of coaching.
It's a weird deal, and I'll get to that in a second because I want to recap 2021 first. But yeah, I have thoughts on what's going on. Oh, and I should do. You know what I forgot to do? I forgot to tell you that these deep dive previews are brought to you by the Circa Sports Contests this year in Las Vegas. We're working on it. We should talk about this after the show. We're going to try to make our way out there. But yeah, all these previews brought to you by the biggest pro football overlays in Vegas. 12 million in guaranteed prizes only at Circa Sports. The Circa Sports Millionaire with the quarterly payouts and the 100% payback, which if you know what that means, they aren't taking the rake. It's like when you play DFS and you play the head-to-head for $10 each and the winner gets 18. None of that at Circa Sports. Full payout, and the survivor, obviously, you know how that works. Pick a team each week, make it to the end. They make it hard. You got to pick a Thanksgiving team. That's why I just stayed out of that one. I'm horrible at Survivor, but I will play this year. And I will say, I probably wouldn't have picked the Patriots many times last year. And my main thought on their 2021 season, as I'm reading other people's previews, looking through things, poring over the schedule, looking at the results, was a conversation we had last Friday with our friend Cleve TA, where we said we need more context to Pythag because the Patriots Pythag said they should have been a 12-win team. But I don't know about that because, well, that's where Pythag is based heavily on like how many points you score versus how many points you give up. But 7 of their 10 games, here I'm going to isolate 7 of their 17 games against the Jags, the Jets, the Panthers, the Browns, the Falcons, and then a Titans team that was without Derrick Henry, AJ Brown, and their starting guard, among other injuries, where they had like 5 turnovers. They outscored their opponents 259-55 in those 7 games.
Wow.
I tend to not give the benefit of the doubt to Pythag when a team just absolutely shit stomps bad teams like this. And good teams should do this. Good teams blowing out bad teams is an important part of becoming that good team. Like, you don't want to end up the good team that loses to the Jets late in the season because you didn't take them seriously. You want to come out there, stomp their throats in the first half, and coast to the end of the game and get yourself to the next game where you might have a decent opponent that you need to take care of business with. But the Patriots were a bit weird in that sense. I think, just like winning all those games against just bad teams by margin kind of maybe skewed things a little, because they did keep a lot of other games close and they had a great game plan for that. Do you remember where McCorkle only threw 5 passes?
I do, yeah. Was it even 5 or was it 3?
I think it was 5. I'm gonna have to fact check that, but that was a 14-10 win against essentially probably the best team in the league last year. And they went to Buffalo and beat that team by coming up with it was a brilliant game plan. It worked out, but a lot of their losses, they were close games. They lost by the Bucks by 2.
They should have beat Tommy week 4. Absolutely. Yep. They should have won week 1. The week 1 loss to the Finns was as fluky as
lost
they come.
Both Miami games. Yes.
That was that week 1 was fluky though. Like, they should have been 3-1 out of the gate. They could have beaten the Cowboys week 6. That was an overtime win for the Cowboys.
Mm-hmm. They absolutely. I'm not saying they shouldn't or they couldn't have won 12 games. I'm just not so sure they should have. Like, just based on that, that's the Miami thing is weird. They seem to always struggle with Miami, but they had a bunch of soft games on their schedule. And this year, looking at the schedule, just getting way ahead of ourselves. Outside of the Jets, it's like the Bears and the Lions, really. So, there's a couple of them middle of the pack. There's a bunch of coin flip games, but you're not going to have a stretch of like 6 games where 5 of them are absolute, pushovers if it comes down to it. So I'm not saying like 2021 was an aberration, that it just a lot of magic and luck, because you did have a very experienced coaching staff making that happen. But for the most part, I'm not super high on just coming out and repeating that same kind of thing with, essentially not relying on your young quarterback to take a step forward. You're going to have to do something with that. And then, I want to get to the coaching staff. Do you have anything else to say on last year?
Yeah, I guess it was a weird. I thought your encapsulation was correct. It was a weird year for the Patriots. They played a very easy schedule in hindsight. They played a lot of rookie quarterbacks, including Davis Mills, Zach Wilson twice, Trevor Lawrence, and they beat the ever-loving shit out of those teams when they played them. The teams that they were truly better than, they did not fiddle fuck around. They absolutely jackhammered them, and that was sort of the signature positives on their schedule. The going into last year, obviously Tom Brady comes off of his 7th Super Bowl win. He did it without Bill. Bill then spends a bunch of money in the offseason, stocking up like kind of mid-level free agents, but volume on both sides of the ball. They are in camp messing around with Cam Newton as their prospective starter. You remember this? Cam Newton was, when we did our preview last year, I bet you Cam Newton was the expected starter. And we were probably ice cold on the Patriots because it's like Cam Newton's arm has not been a thing since 2017. Why in the world would
he
you
was fighting
trot him
his
out
shoulder
there?
was dicked, and he had a lower body injury at some point too. Like
Yeah.
he was fighting just father time until the injury.
Long past his peak, and they were still kind of messing with starting him deep into the season. In fact, it took the week where Cam Newton would not get vaccinated, got COVID, missed a preseason game. Mac Jones got the week of first team reps, did great against the Eagles, and then did well in the preseason game, and then secured the starting job because of that. And like literally, like that whole arc. I mean, you know, because this is weird. Like Belichick is a weird figure because
and that's where we had our stupid Mac Jones Rookie of the Year tickets.
Yeah, I know, 10-1.
I mean, it wasn't a wrong move.
Shouldn't have been. Never. Yeah, I know. God damn, it was a good bet. Make it again. But no,
it's not going to be
Belichick.
that often that a wide receiver.
Here's the weird thing, though. Here's the weird thing, because those of us in the content business, or those of us in the prognostication business that have to take a position on or against the Patriots, are kind of effed, because you basically have to acknowledge the fact that through our entire lives of doing this, Belichick has been a fucking magician, and now he could be still doing the magician stuff, but he could also be going a little crazy, a little senile, a little losing his fastball a little bit. And I don't know where the arc of maybe we're going to go into this season with Cam Newton as our starter falls on that spectrum. Do you know what I mean? Like a rational, sharp, clear thinking Belichick does not spend all that money in free agency and then leave the keys with Cam. He doesn't. He goes right to Jones and is like, look, he'll learn along the way. We'll figure it out. Our coaching staff is good enough to get him caught up, and if he makes mistakes, we'll be there for him. Like that was surprising that it took them the route that it took them to get there. And maybe it was to make sure that he earned the job on his own or something like that. I don't know, but that was a weird arc. Then the season itself, where the defense was playing amazing. The skill position players all kind of at least showed up to the degree that, they earned their paychecks, and their schedule turned out to break incredibly favorably. They emerge from that Week 13 game against the Bills as your presumptive 1 seed in the AFC, which was crazy at the time. And I don't really want to kind of zero in on that game with the 3 pass attempts or whatever it was. It didn't feel like the right decision to do that. That felt like the type of game, and this felt like the type of team where you let Mac Jones learn the hard way. You don't put him in bubble wrap and say the win is more important in this moment than giving Mac Jones an opportunity to either succeed and grow with confidence and then have that confidence that he needed in the playoffs, or to fail and then learn valuable lessons from it. Right.
And that's where I had the same thoughts about that game. That's where I wondered if, like, how much longer is Belichick going to coach? Because
for
old
sure.
Belichick just throws him to the fire, because it's like, we need this guy. Like, we can't
You
not.
said it better than I could.
Yeah, I think that's where I questioned, like, how much longer is he going to want to coach? And maybe after a year of coaching without McDaniels, he just decides maybe it's even shorter of a period of time, because that was the biggest thing that hit me was, and we've been over this before with some other teams, but they weren't teams who were in the playoffs. They were teams with a lot of turnover. And finally, after a decade, McDaniels does go somewhere else. And you, as is tradition in the NFL, you bring in some old rehashes. And in this case, bring in some rehashed old head coaches who were coaches on your staff, Patricia, for quite a while. So you have a defensive coordinator for 5-6 years before he went and took the Lions job. And you have a special teams coordinator before he went and honestly just failed miserably up in New York. And those are apparently it's a competition to be the offensive coordinator, which I know they don't do things the same as other teams up in New England, but why not just get a guy who knows the offense to do something? Why not promote someone who was under McDaniels from within? So
Great question.
I really don't understand this move. And I mean, Belichick's for years, I haven't understood some of his moves and things have worked out, but it feels like if you had Tom Brady at the helm still, if this is 5 years ago and McDaniels takes the Reich job instead, he does move on and you decide to just punt on offensive coordinator. Like, hey, guess what? The guy who
Brady's it.
the guy who cleans up the stadium after the fans leave. He's the offensive coordinator because it doesn't matter. We have a quarterback who knows almost everything he needs to know about the damn league. He's a prodigy. He gets it. He's been around for a decade. But you're at a spot that is vital in a young quarterback's progression to hopefully being your franchise guy, if that's what you're after. And you're doing this. Like we said this, like what made Lamar so good? It was Roman. It was probably part Harbaugh. It was just like putting him in the right position to succeed by having the right coaches at the right time.
Mhm.
Like that's how he won his MVP award. And McCorkle getting a defensive guy, a defensive rocket scientist, and a failed special teams guy as your offensive coordinator. And again, I don't know. It could work out, but it just
Low
feels
probability.
like it feels like the worst case for Mac Jones.
Yeah.
And I do have a Bailey Zappi Rookie of the Year ticket.
Oh, wow.
A lot to win.
Okay, so I agree with everything you just said. And
Can you explain it to me though? Like, what do you think? Okay, I didn't think
Belichick
so.
might not be all the way there. It's the only thing I can assume. Like there's a weird pattern of stuff that suggests he may not be, the same guy that was running circles around the rest of the NFL for 2 decades. Like he just might not be that guy anymore, and that's entirely possible. It's fine. No, doesn't change his legacy at all. He's still the greatest coach of all time by margin. But it was like last season. It didn't. If in the moment, it felt fine to celebrate the Bills win. I mean, the win over the Bills, right? Like, holy crap! What a masterclass from the genius, right? Like he did it. He didn't even have to, have his rookie out there making pass attempts in this crazy conditions. And then the next week, they are in the dome against the Colts, and the Colts just had no respect for Mac Jones at all. Mac Jones did not look comfortable, did not look like he was playing with confidence at all. And it was, kind of like should we be hedging our Rookie of the Year tickets? I don't feel great about this. I thought Mac Jones rebounded fairly well in week 16 against the Bills again, but it was one of those games where Allen was absolutely cooking with gas, and they had kind of unlocked the good parts of the playbook for him because they were ramping up for the playoffs. But then it's crazy. Like the week 17 result was the result that tipped it in balance for Chase. Mac Jones won that game 50-10. Didn't matter. 40-point win. Didn't matter. It was against the Jaguars. No one watched it. No one probably even remembers that game happened. Did not matter. And you lose your finale to the Dolphins. And then that playoff game was really classic rookie making his first playoff start, on top of the fact that you ran into an absolute buzzsaw. And
that was just that wasn't ever going to turn out well.
And so that was kind of the way that their postseason was going to break. It wasn't going to be that lopsided depending on who they played, but they just happened to be a bad matchup and the Bills happened to have their best game of the season. But it still is like, that's how your season was most likely going to end. So you might as well have just conceded that week 13 game and let Mac Jones try to play through the conditions and try to learn a little bit from that. And maybe he plays with a little more confidence down the stretch because of it. Or maybe he's a little bit more prepared to go at Buffalo at night in what is effectively a rerun of that primetime game in the Colts. So that felt like the decision that really derailed their season last year. And then the decision that I think is derailing their season this year does revolve around what is going on with the offensive coaching staff. I fully agree that they needed to have a better plan for the progression of Jones. And honestly, like, they were not very active in what was a quarterback. The right way to frame this is pretty straightforward, I think. They spent a lot of money in free agency last year, right?
A lot. Like,
guess what they have, though?
Guess what they have, though? 2 tight ends.
They have the cheat code in today's NFL, which is they have a capable quarterback on a rookie deal. Mm-hmm. And oh, by the way, Mac Jones's rookie deal is a really good rookie deal. It's not just it's not a 1.01 rookie deal. Like, he is very cost controlled for a long time if you want it to. And so it felt like an obvious thing in this last offseason where a bunch of high profile wide receivers either demanded to be traded, were traded, or were available, and they didn't go and get any of them.
No.
Tyreek Hill didn't make a move. Devontae Adams didn't make a move. Deebo Samuel didn't make a move. Like, maybe there were discussions behind the scenes and they just decided that the asking price was too high. But like, if you're Belichick and you believe in what you have as a rookie quarterback on a cost control contract, that's when you push your chips in the table. You don't have 10 more years doing this. You don't.
No.
And it was, I feel like, either telling that Belichick is not fully committed to this rebuild, or wasn't in his right mind, or somehow, some way, they don't feel like Mac Jones is putting their chips
do you ever feel like they just decided, like, we spent money on receiving last year with, they went and got, they got Henry and Jonnu, and then was Aguilar offseason ad last year?
2 years ago. Last year, the wide receivers they brought in were Kendrick Bourne, Jacoby Myers, I believe, was a draft choice.
The other one.
But this Devontae Parker, that's not the answer in terms of
no. I mean, Devontae Parker's fine, but
it's not.
You have a lot of twos. Like, again,
you got a lot of twos.
Yeah. And you have a decent tight end room.
And we just so happened to be in a cycle where there were a lot of ones available.
Yeah,
known quantity ones, and you elected not to go get any of them. And I'm not 100% sure why.
Such as, I don't understand anything they're doing. And again, everything hinges, like, we just kind of shit on their receiving room, but Parker, Bourne, Jacoby Myers, Aguilar, and those 2 tight ends.
Better than a lot of receiving rooms.
Not only that, like, the Patriots have done this shit for years, where it's like, a lot of these guys, it's like, oh man, Edelman's good or Welker's good. It's like, well, they weren't good before they came, and they certainly aren't good after. Like, they just make mid-tier wide receivers look great, and that's something that you've seen. Obviously, they've had some high-end ones too. Randy Moss was amazing that one season, but they've been able to do this with kind of middle of the pack, above average but not great wide receivers for so long. But now you don't have your offensive coordinator to do that, and it's a pain in the ass for any young quarterback to switch coordinators early in their career.
Yes.
It's worse when that coordinator is a defensive coordinator. Look, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
And maybe there's something, again, if you guys have some info, if you Boston, you massholes know something I don't, or if you read something about Joe Judge, but I mean, it sounded like Patricia was leading that. It was a competition that Patricia was leading. And again, he has been a head coach. He understands how to help put a game plan together. I'm just not so sure I want him guiding a young quarterback in his really formative seasons here. So I'm sketched out by this team. And again, switching to the other side of the ball, it's a team that shed a lot of what made this defense good for years. And granted, I was like, so Hightower, Collins, and Van Noy, where did you have them last year as far as amongst your linebacker rankings without looking?
Oh, they're all upper end of the spectrum.
They're good. I wouldn't
that's
say
half a standard. There's a half a standard deviation over average. All those guys. Nobody's moving the needle that much. Dante Hightower actually is he's the exception. He's not moving the needle at all anymore. He was a negative for me.
But as a group, Hightower, Collins, Van Noy, and JC Jackson.
Van Noy and JC Jackson were 2 very valuable players, I thought.
that has me worried about this defense as well. And they have other good players. Who is that? Judon's great. I'm trying to think. I'm looking right now at the brought
Bunch
back
of good,
Malcolm
yeah,
Butler.
bunch of good players. Yeah, they have both. They have McCourty. Malcolm Butler back is weird.
Malcolm Butler back
Judon
is
is
weird.
perfectly
Yep.
fine player. Kyle Duggar looks like he's kind of another one of those classic day 2 picks by Belichick that's going to be a perennial, all pro or knocking on the door. Lawrence Guy, great tackle. Christian Barmore, great tackle. It's a very, very solid defensive depth chart. And if Belichick does his normal thing, coaching this defense up, they're going to be nasty to face every week, but not really blow you out of the water with their playmaking or their sack totals or their interceptions, just generally pretty good. And the cornerback situation is questionable. There's some holes there, surely. But the front seven is absolutely stout. The offensive line, same story. Absolutely stout. And yeah, if you bring in someone who can operate the way McDaniels did and continue the progression of Mac Jones, then you should absolutely have the expectation that this is a playoff team. But in the absence of that, there are a lot of red flags.
And I think too, despite what I said about the defense, I think losing basically your linebacking core. I don't know how I feel about bringing Mac Wilson in from the Browns. That's not an ample replacement for what you're doing. But losing them and J.C. Jackson, I'm still not that worried about the defense. Like all the things we said about the offense was shit. Are these the guys that are the right people to coach up this offense, to coach up this young quarterback? It has not seemed to matter for many years. What you put out there is similar to what we said about Eberflus when he started in, out there at the Colts. It's like, shit, he just came and turned them around. Like those guys, he took who he had, and some of those guys were terrible the year before, and he coached them up. And the Patriots, they may not do that week 1, may not do that week 4, but by week 10, the defense is somehow just good again. Like it's never been like, oh, this defense is it's really stinking it up all year. So again, losing those pieces sucks, especially J.C. Jackson. But I feel like despite all the bad things we said about Belichick and some of his managing the team styles, I still think him, especially with Patricia back, can manage to get this defense into a spot where it needs to be. And like everything we said about the Jets, I might say the opposite. Like is this an unders team? Again, if this offense is the Matt Patricia offense and the Bill Belichick defense, is this setting football back 50 years?
Maybe. Maybe. If you were to say, what do we have? What do I have high confidence in about this Patriots team? It is that the offensive line is going to be awesome. And it is that the defense is going to be better than average. And that even if the defense starts slow, that they'll find their footing by October. Fine assuming that because of the turnover. I feel like, and again, if I'm being critical of what they didn't do in the offseason, which was go get a bona fide wide receiver 1. Like if they had, I don't even really know how I would feel considering the Matt Patricia, Joe Judge offensive coordinator, rodeo thing. Like I don't get it. I don't think it'll work. And Mac Jones is in a fragile spot. And, it's I don't know what it's going to take for me to ultimately come around on Mac Jones at the end of the day. If he has a 10, 15-year career and goes to the playoffs a dozen times and wins, a bunch of playoff games, I'll eventually have to concede that, okay, this guy's very good, but I'm not there now. And I think the way that they've gone about developing him is concerning.
Yeah, and I think maybe because we haven't got to the Dolphins yet, I don't think the Dolphins are like some mystery. I just don't think the Dolphins have a middle ground. I think it either works or it doesn't this year with Tua. So maybe they aren't. I think this is the team I probably have the biggest question marks. I know what the Bills are. I know what the Jets are. I know the two outcomes that can befall the Miami Dolphins. This team, I'm really not sure. And some of them, again, we're going to go over this every team with a young quarterback. So much of it is just based on we've got a young quarterback who needs to take a step forward and maybe hamstringing him with the coaching decisions we're making. So, and again, it's a team coming off a playoff berth.
Okay, if you're same, so hang on a second. Same class with the last quarterback we talked about, Zach Wilson. You're 80-20 or thereabouts that he's not the answer. Where are you with Mac?
I don't know if it matters where I'm at. What do you think the team will do? Like that's where my mind went. Like what would the team do? Because I can't ever figure out what this team is doing. What do you think the team would do in that situation? Because it doesn't matter where I'm at. I know where I'm at. Like what would that?
Well, where are you? Well, I'm curious though. Where are you at then?
I mean, I'd be if we see. I can't. It's the same thing I said about Wilson.
It sounds like you're 50-50.
Yeah, I think I'm 50-50. Like
that's about where I'm at too.
I'm fine with that. And again, it'll come down to the decision making, but it's going to be heavily tilted against him because it's like, man, is he doing this despite having Matt Patricia as an offensive coordinator, or is yeah. Or was I wrong? And Matt Patricia actually knows quite a bit about football because he's been around it so long and he's a rocket scientist.
Yeah.
What I saw in Detroit isn't going to be helping that decision.
No.
But yeah, I'm 50-50.
Okay, I'm gonna say 51-49. And I think the 51 is only because of the way they've gone about this. I feel like if I had gotten a little bit more positive read on the way they handled their offseason, I would be more like 60-40. He was going to work. But instead, I'm like 51. He's not because of what the Patriots themselves are doing. And it's either they're telling us without saying it, or they are making it so by their decisions. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
So, because like ultimately, like if he succeeds, if it works, and there's a reasonable, again, there's reasonable space that it will, Belichick will get all the credit. He's a genius, blah, blah, blah. Like that's the way it always goes. And then if it doesn't work, like you will look back on these decisions and we'll look back on that game where he had 3 pass attempts and we'll be like, yeah, Belichick knew. He knew he didn't have a guy. That's the way this goes. But in the reality, the most likely reality, I think, is that it's just been a while since Belichick was really cooking on the offensive side of things. McDaniels was probably doing the lion's share of the work. And with him out of the building now and a whole mess of assistants that I do not like, this is a recipe for a problem. Let's look at their schedule.
I think I'm more confused about the Patriots than before we started the podcast.
Well, it's easy to see why, man. Like,
we didn't really talk today. I mean, we chatted a little, but I didn't want to spoil it and like ask you, hey, what's your opinion on this coaching thing? I was kind of hoping you'd just have some answer, like, oh, I read this article that you didn't see, and I have some answers. It's good to know we're both in the fucking dark on this.
No, it's literally like you just heard that, like your grandfather was like driving around in a weird part of town and you're like, is he okay? Like, what's going on? Why was he down there? What was he doing over there? And he doesn't know. He can't explain it. There's whiffs of that. Yeah. Bailey Zapp. What was his price for Rookie of the Year?
Like 150 to 1 or something.
I feel like you should have gotten a bigger number.
I feel like and here's the thing too, they were only taking $10 on it, because I was going to shop it around. It was the only place that had it up. I'm like, fuck it, you can have my $10. So yeah, once you know you know how you have like too many futures pending, and then like something comes and goes, like the NBA playoffs or a draft,
Yes.
and then it
Surely.
clears out, and you're left with like one or two that are sitting in there forever. Like in my bookie account, I have a who will be the next James Bond from like 2018. My God, really, dude? Tommy Shelby. I don't know his real name. That's his Peaky
Who?
Blinders name. It's the guy, Peaky
The
Blinders.
Blind? Oh, wow.
Oh God, what is his name? Someone will say it, but
The guy who was Scarecrow in the Batman a million years ago?
yes.
Okay.
Why can't I
I
think
don't
of
know
his
what his
name?
name is.
Either way, I need him to be the next James Bond to cash that one. But one of my books cleared out, and it just had two, and it was Bailey Zappi to win Offensive Rookie of the Year and Devin Leary to win Heisman at just stupid high numbers. Cillian Murphy.
Jesus.
Thank you, Dan. That's
I don't think
Dan,
he's going to be
I
the
was
next
waiting.
James Bond, but that's just my
I
gut.
mean, he's still in the mix. He'd be great at it. But either way, yeah, let's look at the schedule.
Let's look at the schedule.
Close up the Patriots pod with some schedule and odds talk. It's not horrible. I mean, playing Buffalo isn't great, but
it's not horrible.
It's
but you know
tougher
what?
than last year.
It's tougher. That you took the words right out of my mouth. It's not bad, but it's not last year's schedule. Dogs on the road week 1. How you feel about that?
I mean, again, my Miami number is definitely just barely put on with a light touch. That one can move very quickly.
It's gonna be pretty hot down there.
But I have, like you said, I have New England at a 0. I don't know where you're at. I have them as absolute league average. And Miami is not far off. But I have Miami as a 0.5. So
I have Miami as 0.5.
Yes, I mean this is a fair price. And again, it presupposes a lot of things about both quarterbacks, but
yes,
they don't ever play well down there. Playing Miami early part of the season is never good. Early September, it's still going to be plenty warm, and swamp ass will be all around, full of sweaty old men playing on defense against what could be a fun offense. Like, I'm excited to talk about Miami on Wednesday. There's a lot of fun what ifs with Miami if things work out, but yeah, that's a fair price.
It's a weird schedule. I agree. It is a weird schedule. 3 out of 4 road games out of the gate. Miami, Pittsburgh, Green Bay. That takes a little bit of that takes a little bit of your win probability out of the early part of the season. Your one home game is hosting Baltimore. That's no treat. Your home game is a pick 'em in your first 4. Like, not to say that this is likely, but like that kind of reads like 1 and 3. And if you look at traditional Belichick's years, 1 and 3 doesn't scare you at all. I think they were 1 and 3 last year, and then went on to go to the playoffs, and in the month of December were considered the likely 1 seed. So it's far from meaningful that they could be 1 and 3, but that's not feeling great if you're not, if the offense doesn't look good, if it's because Mac Jones isn't playing well and you happen to have had a tough stretch, that's not great. Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago, Jets is a phenomenal next 4, particularly if at Cleveland is at Jacoby Brissett. Lot of rest disadvantage up and down the schedule. A lot of speculation in my mind about what is happening week 14 and 15. They have the most disadvantaged 2-game stretch in all of the NFL for any teams. They're the max orange, I mean. It is because they are going at Arizona and then at Las Vegas in back-to-back weeks. Non-zero chance Belichick requested this.
Yeah, we've said this, like, it happened before.
Yeah, I don't know where they would stay necessarily, but let's just assume that they stay in Arizona and spend a week of concentrated practice. They might be a great bet on week 15 at Vegas. That might be a great one. But they got to play a bunch of primetime in a row. Look at that, 4 games in a row where they're playing 8 p.m. How wild is that? Living in prime time.
I promised not to talk a lot about the Derby, but I think Schwarber tanked to get into a swing off with Pujols. Pujols hit 13.
Is
This is
Schwarber really going down?
I don't know. I have an exacta with that, but I have an under on Pujols' longest homer, and it's cashing right now. I would like him to not swing anymore. Not that I think he can hit one 360, but yeah, Schwarber looked kind of bad. So
interesting.
Back to the Patriots schedule.
Yeah. Some nasty stuff late. Presumably they'd be a bet on team later in the season as they come together, but those are tough spots.
I'll ask you the question you asked me on Zach Wilson. What do you need to see? Because again, are you in agreement with me that you just think the defense kind of sorts itself out? And it might not be a top 10 defense, but it isn't going to be bottom 20 or bottom 15. It feels like the modal position is right around 12th, like somewhere in that 12 to 15 range. Like it's going to be a good defense, maybe not great, with a chance that it can sneak into the top 10. What do you need to see from this offense to say, I will bet this team to win games, to cover games late in the season against maybe a little bit of a softer schedule?
Weeks 2, 3, and 4 are going to tell me everything I want to know about the Patriots this season. Those are 3 aggressive / talented defenses. Bang, bang, bang in a row. And if the Belichick game plan in those games, or whoever is ultimately calling the game plan, is doing early down running, is leaning on the rushing attack, is not being aggressive, like if they are waiting until they are down a touchdown before they are really doing some early down passing, some play action, and really letting Mac Jones operate more of the offense, then I am hitting the emergency button on the Patriots doing anything this year. If they are aggressive in those games and they let Mac Jones kind of learn the hard way, and even if he's making mistakes and doesn't look good, I will still be more inclined to bet the Patriots at the end of the season if we see them give Mac the keys.
I was hoping you'd reference back to that, kind of come full circle in this team is, if we see what we thought we should have seen against the Bills, I mean, it goes back to everything we say about coaches and front offices. Like, man, I just wish sometimes you'd see these teams do what's right for the team, for the important position players on the team, for the long term of the franchise, and you don't see it a lot. But you expect it out of the Patriots. You expect the right thing. That's why it was disappointing, and I think we also bet the Bills that game, so it was disappointing to see that game come out as in general. But preseason, I'm just looking at the odds. Anything that sticks out at you that you would bet on the New England football Patriots right now? Because
I don't think they have the horsepower to go toe to toe with the Bills in the AFC East. So that is an easy pass, even at plus 450. I don't think that even if you give Mac Jones the keys early in the season and he tries and fails and then ultimately learns and comes out a better player, I don't know that he is winning his first, second, third, and fourth playoff games this year. There is a very real world where the Patriots get in as a wild card and upset a team on the road in the playoffs because of a great Belichick game plan for a one-game sample, or if he's going up against an inexperienced quarterback on the other side of the ball and has had already his his debut flop is already behind him.
Sure.
I could see him getting to the playoffs and I could see them winning a game, but it's contingent entirely upon what we were saying, where early in the season they give him the keys. Plus 160 to make the playoffs is tempting, but not good enough for me, because as we have covered it in ad nauseum now, I'm at like high alert based on the way that Patriots are handling this. What about you?
Yeah, high alert. Like, it's funny. Again, is there a middle ground on this? Like, it's either they're giving him the keys and we're buying into at least they're doing the right thing, and I think I could back this team because, I mean, I'm not a psychologist nor a psychiatrist. In fact, I don't hold any advanced degrees in those fields, but like it does something for a quarterback's confidence. Like how do you think Mac felt after that game? Like,
Couldn't have
we
been good.
won.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
it
we
couldn't have
won.
been
Yeah,
good.
like not only like the psyche of the quarterback, but the psyche of the rest of the team. Like, all right, hey, we trust this quarterback. Like that changes things, I think, in the locker room. I don't know how do you celebrate that win? Like after the game, like fuck, what oh, we're gonna win the Super Bowl because we beat the Bills. Like, you think we can just do this every week? This is goofy horse shit that this works in Disney movies. Like, oh, they were going to pull out the knuckle puck, and it's not going to work against the Iceland team. So I don't know. Like, I got way off sports there, but regardless, yes, if they give him the keys, I think the overall, I don't know, it helps the morale, it helps the locker room, it helps his confidence, and it helps my confidence to back him. And if they don't, I will be probably looking to bet against them in spots where I know like this shit isn't going to work against this team. Good luck with this.
Yeah.
Or at least at this part of the season.
I think that the middle ground is not really there for them. I think that's what you're saying. And I think that's right. This is either they develop him, they treat him because like you can treat him like a quarterback that took a team to the playoffs last year and flirted with the division title. You could treat him that way and force him to continue to grow. Or you can treat him like you treated him last year as a rookie. And no trust, no learning, no nothing. And in that world, this team's winning like 6 games. In the world where they push him a little bit and he grows into the role, I think we're talking about a round 1 playoff appearance, potentially a round 1 playoff win, and then that's the end of the road. I definitely do not see a team that even at their ceiling has enough horsepower, firepower on either side of the ball to go toe-to-toe with the likes of the Bills, the Chiefs, the Bengals, the Ravens, the cream of the Chargers. How did I forget the Chargers? But if it's New England at LAC week 1, round 1 of the playoffs, like you're going to look long and hard at Mac Jones catching 6 points there, aren't you?
Yeah. And again, depending where I'm at on him and the team at the end of the year, but I don't know. We saw it at times too. It's not like we should stop saying give him the keys. I feel like we've exhausted that.
That's it though.
I know, but we saw it. We saw it enough times where I was fine with it. Do you know Pujols moved on?
Yeah, I saw the celebratory tweets.
What the flying fuck is going on?
Siege and BP just belly aching for an hour about getting him in the draft, and he moves on to the round 2.
Hopefully, by the time you've listened to this, they showed a graphic of one of the last times Pujols was in a home run derby. Matt Holliday was in with him. That's the guy whose kid got drafted this year. Like, that's hilarious. So
I respect Pujols for trotting it out at age 50 and giving it the college try.
Yeah, he is definitely not what his birth certificate, quote unquote. I'm with Dan was in our ear there and saying Schwarber threw it.
Bad karma.
Don't disagree that was probably a thing that happened. I didn't watch a second of it. I'm too busy, busting McCorkle's balls. So, plan of betting attack. We kind of touched on it. If we see what we hope to see, where they let Mac Jones take a step forward, they take the training wheels off. Let's use every other. They take the training wheels off. They put him in charge.
Let's say they give him the green light.
They give him the green light. Are they all about driving?
I don't know.
They're all vehicle related.
I just want Mac to get the green light, man.
If they put Mac in the driver's seat with this offense,
Oh God, dude.
And
there's a reasonable chance that they're treating this like they treated Tommy's, progression, where he was game manager until he won his 3rd fucking Super Bowl. Like that's not out of the range of possibility that they're going to go with kind of experience bias. Worked for us before. We're just going to game manager him the whole time. Yeah, go ahead.
I did bet. I said I'm going to bet Pujols to win the first round because it's just a ridiculously high number. and then I didn't.
Oh no!
Instead,
bet
no,
us
and
under.
instead I bet an exacta for all four of the right. Like I said, Alonso, Soto, Rodriguez, Pujols at 12-1.
Oh, good job by you.
So all that money I lost on soccer made it back in one fell swoop, thanks to my 1,000-year-old. Is he Dominican, Pujols? I'm gonna have to.
Sure.
I'm gonna have to fact check that. So, all right, plan of betting. Thanks, Dan, again. Plan of betting attack is wait and see, and maybe we're up, or maybe we're a buyer on this team, despite. Although, I did want to touch on one last thing, maybe a quick piece of trivia to close the podcast.
Go for it.
Because so
I'm
much
excited.
I saw about the Jets was
Love
doom
trivia.
and gloom. The doom and gloom of the Jets is maybe overstated. So I want you to name the last time each of the four teams in the AFC East went to the AFC title game. Just start at the top. The Bills.
Oh my goodness. The Bills has to be the Jim Kelly era.
Well, it was
I'm going to say
more recent than that.
Really?
Yeah.
The AFC title game? Oh,
AFC
yeah. They lost to
title
the Chiefs. Yeah, they lost to the Chiefs 2 years ago. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple years ago. The Chiefs. They did lose to the Chiefs 2 years ago. And then the Patriots. We'll go with the Patriots. I mean, it's been a bunch
Patriots
of them.
was the year that they won and then beat the Rams. They beat the Chiefs. Yeah.
Yep. So both of the last, they're both at KC, both those games. Jets.
Yep. The Jets was the Sanchez losing to the Steelers, I believe.
Yeah. 2010 at Heinz, now Acrisure.
Yep.
And they went to 2 straight. Now do the Dolphins.
Ooh, man. Is it the 1984?
You said it. You were right the first time.
Oh, it was the Jim Kelly era against the Bills. Yeah, surely. It was Dan Marino's last ride, last hurrah.
It was, in Joe Robbie in 1992, where the Bills would go on to the Super Bowl and lose again. But the Jets catch a lot of flack, but man, the Dolphins, it's been a very long time since they've had it's not like the Jets were good those years. They made it to the AFC title game 2 years in a row. You can't shake a stick at that. So
no, yeah.
When was the last time
the Dolphins even won a playoff game? Had to be 99, maybe.
Did Jay Fiedler win any games? When's the last time the Dolphins were in the playoffs? I'm going to pull this up.
2008? Was it 08? Was the year that the Wildcat year?
2016.
Oh.
I really can't remember. I don't remember this at all. They were the final. They were the 6th seed. They got the shit kicked out of them by Pittsburgh.
Don't remember that. Oh no, I do remember that game. That was one where Pittsburgh was laying 8 or 9, and they were no doubt cover.
2008. Before that, they got the shit.
That was Tannehill's only ever success as a Dolphin, right? He took that team to the playoffs and got his teeth kicked in.
2001, they made it to the first round, got the shit kicked out of them. They won a playoff game at Pro Player Stadium in the year 2000 over the Indianapolis Colts as a 3 seed. And then they got stomped by Oakland, and Oakland got stomped by Baltimore, and Baltimore stomped the Giants.
Was that Peyton Manning's first ever playoff loss? First of many?
Probably something in there.
Bet you it was. Good trivia.
Let's
talk about the Dolphins on Wednesday.
We'll be back on Wednesday. Dolphins, and we will just absolutely take the Bills nuts and cradle them in our hands, and just we're gonna be so pro. We're gonna be so pro Bills, aren't we?
Well,
this is your homework assignment, Drew Dinzik.
Yeah,
I want you to come up with 5 negatives about the Bills. We'll both come up with 5, because otherwise it's going to be a total suck fest.
I can get 5.
I think it's easy, but that's what I'm naming the hunt down, because I have nothing but positive things to say. I'm going to
can't win a coin toss.
Devil's avocado.
They have no answer for Travis Kelce. That's a problem. All right, I'll get 5.
We'll come up with 5. So, all right, this is a good one.
Cole Measley's gone, so it can't be on the list.
Yeah, that doesn't hurt.
That's wild. Jay Fiedler beat Peyton Manning. He came back from down 14 at halftime to beat Peyton Manning in that Colts Dolphins game in 2000. That Pro Bowl.
I was right then. I said Jay Fiedler. That's hilarious. 20 years ago, man.
Dave Wannstedt got the head-to-head win versus Jim Mora. Playoffs.
Dave Wannstedt. Jesus. All right. We'll be back Wednesday. Play us out, Dan.
Colts were 1.5-point favorites. That game went under the total, closing total of 42.
I didn't click on anything. This is the final score. I assumed it was Fiedler.
Oh, shit. Dolphins won in OT. That was the 6th one.
Really?